Welcome everyone to a brand new episode of Growth Secrets. Today's guest is Ludwig Dumont, the founder and CEO of Willow. Willow is a fast-growing SaaS company helping B2B service companies taking control of their social media presence. From bootstrapping to crossing major growth milestones, a couple of months ago, Ludwig and his team launched Will, an AI agent for social media. Today we're mostly discussing the rapid growth of Will, and I really love to welcome you, Ludwig. So welcome at Growth Secrets.
Thank you, Yannick, and great being here.
Okay, maybe a really open question to start with, Ludwig, but what should people definitely know about you, Willow, and Will? So give us a little bit of background there.
So much to share, right? No. I think what they should know about Will is that Will is the virtual social media assistant meant to help solopreneurs, coaches, individual service providers with building out and maintaining a great presence on LinkedIn. It's really meant to be super frictionless, to be super easy. Will lives in your WhatsApp, so you can just like text Will, and Will is going to help you with coming up with great content for your LinkedIn. And then what they should know about Willow is that Willow is the social media management solution focused on B2B professional service providers. Let's say you're an office manager and you need to kind of also do the social media management for your firm. Then Willow is a really valid value proposition. And Will actually was born out of Willow. And that brings me to myself. I have a pretty strong background in social media marketing and marketing in general. Doing that as a consultant. I've been working for corporates. I've been doing that in Belgium. I've been doing that in the United States. I also come from a SMB family where I saw that social media was quite a challenge. So kind of like Ludwig, Willow, and Will are all nicely intertwined. And maybe one fun fact is people sometimes think that Will and Willow refer to Will Smith and his daughter Willow Smith, and that's not the case.
Okay, good that you clarify that. I haven't made that link, by the way, but now that you say so, I can imagine that some people do.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe one step back. I think a lot of people listening to the show might have heard about Willow already, but you said we're evolving or we're also doing more things on AI agents, etc. What made that you evolved in that way? Was it just the market asking for that, or what was the trigger for you to build something like Will?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question, and it's a very important one from where I'm seeing it. So it came from I would say a frustration I had with Willow. So I saw that with Willow we were actually helping quite a lot of people with like making social media management frictionless. But I also saw that for example, individuals within a company or let's say solopreneurs, that although Willow has a lot of automations going in terms of social media management, it's very easy to create a post and then to share a post all through Willow. I still saw that it took too much time. And that kind of made me think about like, hey, I really want to like have an impact. And if I see that it still takes too much time, although Willow already like makes it way more efficient than doing it like for yourself straight from socials, I said, okay, let's really think about a solution. And I would say that frustration with something that we were not 100% solving with Willow led to the creation of Will. And then, of course, like you had AI agents like making a lot of buzz. You had like this concept of being capable of integrating within social media apps, integrating with existing direct messaging apps such as WhatsApp. And then is also that's when I saw that it was perfectly possible to actually build something that was even way more frictionless than what Willow was.
Yeah. And hey, you already touched it briefly, but the entire will experience happens for the customer in WhatsApp. You mentioned.
Yeah.
What was your MVP like? Yeah, how do you start building something for the people like that? I think we all know Lovable, etc. these days, but how do you build an MVP for such an experience?
Well, for me, it's all about like understanding like two things, like understanding like how you can build something as frictionless as possible, because that's really something I learned with Willow. Like the more you basically integrate your solution within the existing workflows of people or within like how people communicate or live their lives, the better it's going to be. So I really thought about like we need to build something super frictionless, and then two, it also needs to really add value. So it needs to help them with like getting a job done, like getting great content on their social media, right? So what we basically did at the start is we basically built like a very comprehensible mock-up, I would say, that would show like, hey, you're having a conversation in WhatsApp with Will. Like we made a mock-up, we just designed it, and then we kind of shared it on our social media. We shared it with people, just to gauge the interest. And then we saw that a lot of people were like, this is great. They shared that social media post that we made. They reached out to us. And then that basically gave us an idea on like, if we could actually build this and if it would actually be functional, fully functional, this would be something that people would really love. And that was kind of like the first version of Willow. It was not a fully functional product at all.
Yeah, that's how it usually goes, like a fake door or like a mock-up test or whatever. It's good to get validation in that way. And I think the AI tools like Lovable, I mentioned them, Replit, these guys, yeah, they really help us to build MVPs a lot faster. And I think it's a really good thing. But maybe one step further then, you said we did an MVP, we showed it to people. I think Willow is mostly focused on, yeah, selling to B2B companies, where Will is, yeah, you're almost selling to consumers, right? To solopreneurs, to individuals. How did you manage to, yeah, basically you're running two different business models in one company. How do you do that?
Yeah, so it's very important to understand that there's quite some compatibility between Willow and Will, right? Because what we also saw with Willow is that aside from, I would say, like the corporate branding of, let's say, a B2B professional service provider, like those companies also wanted to activate the personal LinkedIn profiles of their employees, for example. So we immediately saw that that was a very important part of being successful with Willow, was also being capable of activating the social media profiles of like employees, colleagues, people in the firm, people in the company. So by learning that, we then thought about ways to further facilitate that for all those individuals within those companies. So in that respect, Will and Willow are very compatible. But it is true that, you know, like if you would just like make a distinction, you could actually look at like Willow and Will as two distinct standalone business models. And I also believe that, you know, purely from a growth perspective, those are like actually good options for us. But at the same time, they're also very compatible. And that's also why we decided to kind of like build a standalone version of Will, being capable of like launching it without needing Willow. But then as time move forward, maybe then also when the right time is there, promote Willow to people that are using Will or vice versa.
Yeah, like an upsell kind of thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or like a complementary offer, I
Yeah.
would almost call it.
Because indeed, if you say like, I recognize it from a lot of my customers, they all want their employees to post things about the company on LinkedIn, etc. Yeah, let's call it employee advocacy or something. There is also a different tech space around that. You have Ambessify, etc. in Belgium. But how did you land your first paying customers then for Will? Is that through upsells or?
Actually, that was really through the very frictionless experience, right? So I still remember somewhere in March of this year, we basically had the first like working version of Will, where people would basically just like go to a landing page. They would just click on a button, text Will. The button said text Will, and then people would end up in a like a WhatsApp conversation with Will. So you see, there's no onboarding at all. You're immediately like conversating with Will. So it's a very frictionless onboarding experience. And then people were actually just like, hey, can you help me with creating a social media post? Yes, I can. What would you like to be the post about? So like having a conversation. And then because the whole onboarding experience from like starting to use Will to actually getting your content on those social media channels was actually that frictionless, it was really easy to then in that WhatsApp conversation at the right moment ask the question to people, hey, I see that you're enjoying like your experience with me, it seems like you're really getting value out of like using me for your social media. I would love to help you further in WhatsApp. It all happens in WhatsApp, very important. But you know, if you want to work with me in the future, you kind of need to start paying. And then people would actually be capable of like pay for Will directly in WhatsApp. So they don't need to kind of leave WhatsApp. It's just like with Apple Pay, they double tap the side of their phone, and then they actually pay for Will, and then they can keep on using Will. And I think that's also very important. Like it's not only the onboarding and starting to working with Will that is super frictionless. It's actually also like the checkout process.
Yeah. Because indeed, I see you doing a great job marketing, Will. I see you speaking at conferences. I see you in the media. I see you doing a great job on LinkedIn yourself. But how does Will differentiate itself from other tools like some that come to mind is Taplio or even Buffer and Hootsuite, which are like, yeah, Silicon Valley tech giants, I think, in the meantime. How do you compete with these companies?
I think so. First and foremost, Will is I would call it the new generation social media solution. Whereas like with Tapio, with Buffer, with Hootsuite, they've been basically born like pre the whole AI era. I would almost call it, right. So they have not basically integrated AI in the core of their offering. They've basically integrated it later on, but it's not been the core of their offering. And that also leads to the way they are built. The companies that you're mentioning are really like the done with you solution. So they provide you templates, they provide you a framework, but you still need to kind of do all the heavy lifting. Whereas with Will basically does the heavy lifting for you, does the work for you, and then asks you if it's okay. So it's a very laid back experience. Will is a very laid back experience, like compared to like the other solutions that you're mentioning, right? And I think that is a very important value differentiator for Will, definitely given the fact that like the market that we're going after is really a market where the biggest scarcity is time.
Yeah. I get it, yeah. Because that's also one of my questions. Indeed, it's how do you see AI and AI tools shaping the future of social media marketing for small, medium-sized businesses?
From where I'm looking, I see it as a catalyst for growth. So I don't necessarily see it as like a replacement. I know that there are different like ways of looking at this, right? I mean, I'm sure that you also have your opinion, but I definitely see it more as a catalyst, something that basically makes people stronger in what they need to do instead of like just replacing people. So within that, I would say framework, I really see Will as a way of like helping experts like vocalize their expertise on LinkedIn, for example, and not necessarily like fully replacing people's thoughts or just like generic AI prompts that then lead to generic content. It's really about like getting the knowledge that people have within them as experts, getting it out them, and then translating that into like great content on social media that basically sounds like them.
Yeah, exactly. Because, for example, my wife, she works for like a small company that does like, yeah, furniture for companies.
Okay.
What's the exact title of what they do? To be honest, I need to research that. That's a small note for myself. But she works there, and they have like an external marketing consultant doing the work for them, and that's how many companies do it today. Yeah, basically what you're saying is that yeah, Will and many other tools, yeah, they are replacing that kind of person, right? Or am I mistaken? How do you see that?
For me, it's really about like imagine having like an army of personal assistants, all with a very specific expertise. So Will is then like your personal assistant when it comes down to like making sure that the way you portray yourself, the way you position yourself on LinkedIn is really in line with who you are, is really in line with your expertise, is really in line with what you want to achieve. And I think you'll have like an army of these like personal assistants that should all have a specific expertise. So it's more like being very close to the person who is trying to achieve a job than like having I would call it like a generic solution for a company.
Yeah. Because there's a company, I forgot the name, I should remember it, but it's a company, they had like a billboard ad these days in San Francisco, I think. And
Artisan,
yeah,
like
these
a
ones, yeah, stop hiring humans.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's like the other side of the spectrum, I think, because that's
yeah.
like pretty brutal. In my opinion, they get a lot of backlash on that as well. Of course, yeah, if you don't piss people off, you're not doing something right. That's also famous
They're
marketing.
great marketeers, right? They're just super great marketeers. Like,
It's a great way to go viral, but yeah, do you think we're really going there, or how do you see that?
you know, like I don't need to tell you, right, Yannick? Like today we actually have we're pretty clueless. We kind of know that like AI is ubiquitous. It's there. Like you're moving from like very technical concepts to real like life applications. And then you have this notion of digital workers, and Artisan is an example of a company that basically provides you with digital workers. And then some say like we're helping people
Yeah,
in a company, others say we're basically replacing people in a company. I think like we're not necessarily like very clear on where this is going, but I think adaptability and being capable of moving with the market is just like what is necessary within companies right now. If it's going there, you know, companies need to be capable of adapting. If it's not going there, also like people need to be capable of adapting. I think it's just like nobody knows.
Because I'm currently running a survey on the adoption of AI tools within marketing teams, and what
right?
I noticed there already, it still has to finish running for the next couple of weeks, but something that's already catching my attention is that a lot of people use AI. I think it's like so far 93% use AI tools in their marketing teams. I'm super curious about the other 7%, but putting that aside, um, what I see is that only a handful of people they can track the ROI of the AI tools, for example, and that's something. Are you already working on that with Will, for example? Because yeah, ROI, social media, yeah, they go hand in hand, and that's like a lot of the tools. Yeah, I call them credit card AI. It's like 20 euros there, 50 there, and in the end you have like a lot of tools, but yeah, what does it mean for you on a business level?
Yeah, so I think it's like also there I see like two distinctions, right? And I think it's also like typically how like agents are going to be potentially priced. You have like agents that are priced on like outputs, like what they basically like the work they do. Like, do they create content? Do they kind of set up campaigns? Do they optimize to the work that they do? And then you'll have like agents like being priced on the outcome, like what are the results that they achieve. And depending on the use case, like outcome-based pricing versus output-based pricing might be a bit different. In our case, and that's also like the experience like with running Willow that now talks a bit, I know that input is output. I know that if people are consistently posting very good content on their social media, like if they can like get there and if they can kind of keep it going, then the outcome, like the people reaching out, sending them DMs, like wanting to hop on a demo, like having a conversation, is going to follow anyways. So my main thing now with Will, and that's basically what we've learned thanks to Willow, is really making sure that people can get into the consistency of using Will to get great content on their socials. So for me, like all that being put into perspective, like Will has more of a output based model than a purely outcome based model, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One question on that, and there's not my opinion is totally not in that question. It's just a question, and you probably expected that one coming as well. But what's your perspective on the what people call AI content spam? I think there's a big fear. Mainly, I see people complaining on LinkedIn that comments are generated with AI, etc. That posts are too generic, and that the AI generated content that it's too generic. That's maybe thing. How do you make sure that you keep Will on the quality side of this?
Yeah, and I think that's like a very, very like that's going to be, I think, one of the most important questions moving forward, and not necessarily because of the question itself, but I think because of like the answer to the question. Let me clarify. I think that so some context. I think that those solutions such as Replit, Lovable, and there's going to be like a gazillion more in the future are really nice for experimentation purposes. I think like it sparks creativity in ways you couldn't have imagined like even 3 months ago, right? And I think that's really great. But I think there's also like a flip side to that same coin. And the flip side to that coin is that now everyone can become a marketeer, or everyone can build like a technical solution for whatever problem people are having. And I think that what they call vibe coding concept, like people can just code whatever, I think it's great for experimentation, but I think it's also like pretty dangerous when it comes down to like building like really valuable solutions for problems that people might have. And I think there, the biggest differentiator, and I think one of the most important things that people should do when they look for solutions, like such as Will, is look into who is actually the team that is building the solution. Does that team has the domain expertise when it comes down to this specific topic? And like, with all due respect, if you're like just like fresh out of the gate, out of uni, and you basically have zero expertise with like social media management or social media marketing, and then you're building an AI agent that is going to help companies with creating great content on their social media, then you're not the right person to build that solution, because you have zero affinity with what great social media is. And I believe if you have great affinity, for example, in our case with social media management, like with the strategies to do great social media, with like helping thousands and thousands of companies and businesses with their social media, then you're the right team, and then you're the right party to actually build such a solution, because you have the domain expertise. You're not just building tech, You understand the problem, you have the domain expertise, and then you're building a solution that is going to help people with that. And that domain expertise of a team is going to become more and more important when it comes down to like building like technological solutions that apply AI, for example.
But like one crazy story, and I think there are many others. I really like what you said, the domain expertise. That's still, yeah, the core to building a successful business. But for example, one example that, yeah, that tells us completely the opposite there is I think it's an 18-year-old guy. I think his name is Zach. Yeah, I don't remember his last name, but he built an app. It's a photo calorie app. It's called Cal AI. I don't know if you heard of it, but
Yes.
the guy is doing 30 million ARR. He's 18 years old. It's a 1 or 2 person team. He was on another podcast recently. And I was so, yeah, it's insane, right? And that's, I think, what blindsides a lot of people when it comes to building these AI tools, AI wrappers, etc. I think the key is in distribution, right? Because, for example, I wanted to see the tool. I bought like a year license. It was back then, it was $30 or $40. Yeah, I used it a couple of times. Yeah, I lost interest and I churned. But yeah, the guy is making like 30 millions with this solution, and that's crazy. And he has like zero experience in doing calorie tracking apps, right? Or any nutrition based experience. I think it's crazy. But what's your opinion on that? Is it a lucky shot, or do you see more of these coming?
Again, it's very hard to tell. I'm very happy for the guy.
Yeah.
Good for him, right? That's kind of like my answer. Good for him. But that's not how I look at things. I honestly still think that the domain expertise, definitely when you want to build like a long-term solution and have long-term impact, I still think that that domain expertise is really key. And I think like he's a very nice example of what is possible. And I think purely from a mindset perspective, like shoot for the moon, just go for it. Like he's a great example. But I really prefer using our domain expertise and then building a solution that is really in line with our domain expertise. But that's just me, right?
Yeah, but I get it in the point of Will. Yeah, you know social media. You've been in social media for like as long as I can remember. So I really understand the value of domain expertise. And you don't have to convince me there. I really get it. But it's just yeah, it's actually funny that you see like yeah kids. Because he's a kid. Yeah, building like crazy businesses out of their room. It's yeah. It's insane, and I think AI is really making that so much easier for people. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
and it's like you say, right? In the end, it's all about distribution, right? So if you
Exactly.
find a good distribution channel, if you have a good story, if you have good marketing, you can fly super high, right? Because now you can build faster, you can ship faster, you can deploy faster than ever before. And I think, it also creates a lot of new opportunities for people. And in the end, we should all be happy for that, right?
Exactly. Talking about distribution, let's go there. I
Let's
think if
go.
I'm not mistaken, I saw you recently hit the 2 million ARR. What were some of your key milestones achieving that?
So I think what is very, very important is that you keep being curious. And that's really something I learned when building Willow and also when building Will. Like, there's no point in time when you can say, like, okay, we have it, we got it, this is how it is going to be for the future. And now we're just going to do more of the same. I think, of course, at some point in time, you find a key and the key fits the door and you can open and you can close the door like different times. And I think that's really great. But things are moving super fast nowadays. Like, it's really important to remain curious and to always look for new ways to further improve what you do or to further innovate what you do. And I think that's been like my main learning so far is that, never become complacent, never become like, okay, we got to the 1 million mark. Okay. Like we're there. You're never there. You need to keep on building. You're always like, there's always more you can do. There's always more growth that you can achieve. And I think that mindset, like always find new ways, remain curious in what you do, is for me the key for growth. Yeah.
Because yeah, indeed, I know you as or I got to know you as a growth hacker. I know you love like to play around with marketing tactics, and you're always on top of new tools. So what is the most underrated or least known growth tactic that you used to grow Willow? Or
I think it's not necessarily a tactic; it's more of a mindset. I think the grit is, I think, what defines like any great marketeer, but also any great salesperson, I think it's more of a mindset thing. It's like independent of the number of backlashes that you have, you just keep going. And you kind of embrace the idea that a struggle is life. It's never going to be easy, but you just keep going. So you have this kind of a grit in your heart, in your head, that basically always keeps you going. And I think when you keep going, at some point in time you're going to find something, and then it's basically being smart about finding that something, leveraging that something, and then keep going. So for me, it's not necessarily a tactic, it's more of a mindset, if that makes sense.
And of course, I was going there, but like talking about the tactics, what are some of the tactics you guys are exploring, or that were really successful for you guys?
I think in the end, it's all about word of mouth for us. So I think once you reach a certain scale, once you're branding, I think brand equity is also very undervalued. And I think definitely like in Belgium, this is the thing that people still don't really get 100%. Once you start like focusing on a very specific market, on a niche, then it's quote unquote easier to become top of mind or to become a brand in that niche because you're focusing, right? So it's not like a super broad dispersed market. It's like a well-defined ICP, a well-defined market. Then you start becoming a brand within that market. And then once you get there, then you can start leveraging word of mouth. And I think that's the thing that we really learned, is that leveraging word of mouth, like using your customers to convince other customers, telling the stories of your customers to convince other customers, not talking about you, but talking about the success of your other customers, I think is a very important tactic that we used. And then, of course, you have distribution. You can do it through social media. You can do it through conversations that you have. You can do it through your website. You can do it through email. Then it's really about like using word of mouth in a smart way.
Yeah. Yeah, like an example I recently ran into myself is like Superhuman. I had the founder on the podcast
Rahul.
2 weeks ago, and they are really great in doing that. And I think they really stole or borrowed like the old Hotmail growth hack.
Yeah,
Like, yes,
100%.
I love you. They have like
Yeah.
this email is sent by Superhuman. And to be honest, I had like the paid version, so I wasn't aware they put it there by default. So it was there, and suddenly I got an email like, yeah, someone registered to a paid Superhuman account through your affiliate link, which is like, yeah, it's crazy that people, do it, in my opinion, that it still works. But I was so surprised that someone just received an email of me and that said like, yeah, this email is sent by Superhuman, and that person just signed up, so I got like a free month. But it's insane. It still works. It's super nice. Is that also how you guys do it, or because with
Yeah, it's very funny. Like, like the Hotmail, I think like you can find so many great growth stories in an era when people were actually not yet even talking about growth marketing, such as like the Hotmail example, right? I think it's great. Another thing is, for example, in social media posts that people make, sometimes the URL that you see in their post, it's also sometimes branded. Those are little things that really lead to like potentially to virality. And I think the example of Superhuman is like a more updated version of the Hotmail example. And this is, for example, also something that we're exploring for Will. So let's say that you use the free version of Will, then there's a at the bottom of your post, it basically says like created by Will, or Will supported in creating this post, or like a version of that, just to
I saw
kind of
that
like,
on LinkedIn, right?
yeah, exactly. And then when they start paying for Will, it's for example no longer there. So we're basically like using the tools that they already used like 20, 30 years ago, but
Growth
now
hacking
in
a la
a
letra.
but it's great, eh? I love it. I love
Yeah, and
those tactics.
I also discussed that with Superhuman's founder Gorav. Like all the examples you still find about growth hacking and growth marketing, yeah, they're all still like really old examples from the first growth hacking book. They stay super relevant, and it's so weird that in an age of AI, etc. Yeah, we don't go farther than clay automations, etc. And these are nice. I don't understand me wrong, but it's weird that we don't come up with like better and more creative growth hacks. We keep going to the old ones like Hotmail and like Dropbox, etc. So yeah, it's weird, but yeah.
I might have a new one. Like I'm
Okay,
interested in your
I'm all
in
ears.
your opinion. So basically, what we're thinking, is it okay if I share this here?
Yeah, of course. This is the
Okay.
Growth Secrets podcast. We need secrets.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is like an idea I have. Um, for Will, right? To create some virality for Will. Like social media is always better in group, right? So that's the whole point of social media, right? It's like a community driven thing. So the more people, the better it gets. That's also one of the growth hacks of LinkedIn back in the days. Is like, hey, you like LinkedIn, it's better with more people. Invite people to LinkedIn, right? So like my idea for Will would be, so imagine you're a Mr. Growth Hacker, like you found a really great podcast, maybe this one, about growth marketing, and you're like, hey, I'm on the go, but I really still need to make a social media post on my LinkedIn about this. So you're going into your WhatsApp with Will. You basically drop the URL to this episode in Will, and you're like, hey Will, I create a social media post, create a LinkedIn post out of this episode. Please use my tone of voice, etc., etc. So Will does that, and then you're like, you get a proposal of a post in your WhatsApp, and then Will would say like, hey, I see that you recorded this session with Ludwig. Like, wouldn't it be interesting if Ludwig would also share this post on his LinkedIn? And you're like, sure. And then what Will would do, Will would then basically send that post that you just created through Will to Ludwig. And then it would say, hey, Yannick made a post about this podcast with you. Would you also like to share it on your social media? Ah, yes. Okay, click here. And then Ludwig, me, ends up in a conversation with Will to use that piece of content that you made to then share a post on his LinkedIn about that through Will. And then basically like opening it up that way, you basically start including people in the content that you created through Will.
I think it's a really great idea. I think I was using something like 10 years ago.
Okay.
Should I disclose which startup it was?
Yeah, of course.
Don't know they're still around. I'm quickly googling it, but it's called Q. Q U.
Used it too. That was like the first thing I used for the MVP with Willow. Yeah, okay.
And then the crazy thing was you could upload your links or your blogs or whatever. You could make posts, pre-generate posts, and yeah, everyone using Q and said like, for example, the topic is growth marketing or innovation or whatever. Yeah, the people who had that topic, they would had it loading in their feed. So
and
they
their
would
queue, right?
in their
So they
queue.
would share. Yeah.
And I remember back then in the beginning, yeah, we had like, then also on a website, you could see how many times a blog was shared. Remember, you had the AppSumo thing that told people how many shares something had. And we had like posts with like thousands of shares just through Q. But then, yeah, social media changed. Links didn't work that much anymore. Organic was like all super limited. And also there, it was not super, yeah, how do you say it? Like you mentioned like social media works better when you do it in a community, in a group of people. Q was very isolated back then, and that was what yeah, I think I don't know if they're still around, to be honest. I have to look into it, but yeah, they were doing that 10 years ago, but without all the AI features and yeah, the co-creation aspect. So I think it's a really great idea to do it.
Yeah. That's kind of like a novel way of making sure that we get more distribution for Will, like not only through people just saying, hey, I'm using Will, this is great, you should also use it, but more like, hey, I created a piece of content, you're in this piece of content that I created, it might also be interesting for you to share it on your social media channels.
There was also another tool back then. I also forgot the name. I'm getting old, but was the same period. What they did is that you could use your own URLs, your blogs, for example, and you can put them as a snippet on another blog. Like for example, you were sharing an HBR or a Forbes article. You could put your own URL as a snippet on that page. That was also like super useful.
Yeah. It was like the call to action, right? You had like, yeah. Oh yeah, I also use that one a lot.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I
we
still
were like the
remember.
old, like we're
Yeah,
like
but
really getting old.
yeah, but it's still valid, eh? The way they do it, it was like correct. They would now call it intent discovery. Like that was also like the old school version of intent. Eh? You have an interesting article, and then you put a call to action that is relevant for the article that people are reading. So
Exactly, but also like if I would be building Will, I would look for that ways as well, because like, for example, you can have one call to action and you can put it as an extra, as a layer on top of all your content, for example. And that's like something really great, because as you know, yeah, LinkedIn, etc., they really don't like links in posts, because you're taking people away from the platform, etc. Yeah, there should be a solution for that, because now everyone is putting their link in their featured section on the LinkedIn profile. But to be honest, how many people look there? Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
sure, but
Yeah, it's very limited, and that's also like I think that's also where like to kind of like circle back a bit to that domain expertise. I see a lot of people like really being almost obsessed with like changes in the LinkedIn algorithm, and they're like, okay, what should we do now? Like the LinkedIn algorithm changed again. Like everybody like panics, but you know, like the basics always remain the same. Like just create great content that is relevant for your audience. Just keep doing that consistently, and like great things are going to happen. And I wouldn't worry too much about LinkedIn algorithm. I wouldn't worry too much about like sharing external links, not external links, images, no images, videos, no images.
yeah.
As long as your content is relevant and as long as it's in line with your expertise, I think people are going to find it.
Yeah,
Simple.
exactly. I agree. I agree. Because that was also one of my questions. Like, how do you feel about paid social versus organic social? Any hot takes there?
Yeah, so I think both have definitely like their use case. I think you also like did a part with the marketeer at Loop.
Yeah, Alex. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think like great example of like scaling paid, right? I mean, like, and it works like crazy. Yeah? It works like crazy. So there's definitely a place for paid, but I think it needs to come in the right sequence. I think if you have not figured out what works organically for a specific objective, let's say lead generation or employee branding, what have you, it doesn't make too much sense to already start doing paid, because
No.
then you're just going to start doing paid based on like a thing that you don't know. If you see that like certain organic content is really working well, like and it's of course like a matter of like being smart about like what you share and analyzing what works and what doesn't work and comparing, then once you found something that from an organic perspective works really well in line with your objective, then I think you can start doing paid, and then it's really going to work well. But I see too many people like throwing money through doors and through windows, and they start doing like campaigns and they start doing paid, and it's very expensive, and then they tell me that it doesn't work. But then I always ask the question, like, why did you even start with this? And then they're like, oh, because we thought it was a good idea. But I think, yeah, you should first look at what works organically and then start doing paid.
Yeah, and organically, for some things, the reach is just super limited. What also works there, and what we do a lot is like doing outbound, sending the different hooks and messages through outbound, LinkedIn, email, etc. See what resonates, and that we turn into paid ads. And that's also a great way, because organic social, and a lot of times, if you have a limited following, yeah, it requires, and that's nice about Will. You keep people posting consistently, but a lot of people who have to do it themselves, yeah, the consistency, yeah, they really lack it, right? It's hard for people, and I'm one of them myself. Like sometimes I post like a week every day or twice a day, and then I don't post for 3 weeks, and it's so hard to keep up with the consistency.
Yeah, that's the main challenge, right? And that's also where like the whole idea of Will, who lives in your WhatsApp, is great, because people are still on top of their WhatsApp. So with Will, we could nudge you. We could say, hey, Yannick, for you, it's important to post twice a week. It's Thursday. You haven't come up with anything just yet. And then Will basically proposes a post for you in WhatsApp for you to share. So we can nudge you into the consistency.
Okay, maybe going back to the go-to-market side of things, like what's your number one go-to-market channel? You mentioned word of mouth, but if you have to put it in like channels, what channel are you mostly focusing on?
WhatsApp.
You also for marketing purposes, you
Yeah.
see people, okay.
That's going to be like the main growth driver for Will is going to be WhatsApp marketing.
That's cool. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Because I think WhatsApp as a marketing channel, it's still a black box for a lot of people. How do you get started with it, and what are some of the best practices?
So first and foremost, like you need to get like familiar with like WhatsApp marketing. So WhatsApp for business. You can basically just get an account there. Like I have a WhatsApp for business account, and once you have a WhatsApp for business account, you basically start seeing like the advertising or the marketing possibilities that WhatsApp offers. So I started playing around with WhatsApp for business, I don't know, like 2 years ago or maybe 2.5 years ago, and that's when I actually saw like the enormous potential. And then it's really about connecting with the right people. Like I've had conversations with Nick Blom from Conversation 24 in the Netherlands, who's kind of like Mr. WhatsApp in the Netherlands. I had conversations with the WhatsApp experts at Meta when I was still in the United States. So it's really getting familiar with like the channel and then understanding where the marketing potential lays for the channel. And then where I see like the biggest opportunity in terms of WhatsApp marketing, it's on basically I would say two axes. One axis is basically WhatsApp marketing through the WhatsApp connections of users, right? So that's kind of like recommend, or at the right point in time have a nudge to kind of propose Will, or to propose the content that Will offers
Like
to the network.
we know lookalike audiences on Facebook in the past, or is it different?
It's actually even more personalized. It's more like let's say that you're an active Will user, and okay, at some point in time, at the right moment, like Will basically like asks you like in WhatsApp, hey Yannick, like a great post out there again, like congrats, sharing is caring. Sharing is caring. Like who could be interesting people that would really like Will? And then basically I ask you to create a lookalike audience. So I'm not gonna like redefine it. I'm gonna ask you like, who do you think might basically be a good like user for Will? So it's really like leveraging. Sorry.
Referrals on steroids, basically. Yeah.
Referral on steroids, and then also like through WhatsApp, right? And then you go to the other person, and then the other person does the same. Like you do too, that person does too, or those two people do too. Then those 4 person do too, etc., etc. So yeah, you get to exponential growth basically just through like WhatsApp recommendations. That's one thing. And then the other axis I really see through WhatsApp is like the distribution circles. So you basically have distribution channels in WhatsApp. For example, Mark Zuckerberg has one. WhatsApp has one where you basically create a community around like a specific like broadcast channel in WhatsApp, and that's another community that I'm starting to build in WhatsApp now.
Cool. Yeah, nice. You just mentioned that when I was still in the US, so that's also a different part of your life. I remember, I think you work for Belcham there in San Francisco, so you were part of the Silicon Valley community. What are like the key difference, putting the current political landscape aside, but what are like the key differences between the European market and yeah, the US market, especially in terms of social media and tech adoption?
So I think like Silicon Valley or San Francisco, for that matter, has been born with tech. So people like it's not been like added at some point in their lives. Definitely on for example, social media. Businesses have grown up with like Facebook, have grown up with like LinkedIn, with Twitter, with all these companies that even don't exist anymore. Foursquare, Path, and etc. etc. So it's so much in their DNA, social media, that they basically don't think about it as like, right, we also need to do social media. Like, of course we need to do social media. It's not like it's more like we need to do it, and not like maybe we can do it, right? So I think that's one thing when it comes down to social media. But then I would say more generally put, there's a real appetite for experimentation, for trying things. And I think there, it's if you haven't tried a new thing on any given day, you basically were like a bit complacent that day. So they always try out new things, and they always try out new things, and they always try out new things. And of course, it's easy because every single day there's a new thing that they can try. But that whole like, let's try something, it's not working. Okay, let's try a new thing. It's not working. Okay, let's try a new thing. This seems to be working. That whole experimentation mindset is like very key to for example, San Francisco or to Silicon Valley.
Okay, an appetite for experimentation.
Yeah,
That's
100%.
all summarized. Yeah, cool. Going back to experimentation and AI tools, are you using any AI tools yourself? I assume you do, like I know you, but what cool examples can you give us?
So eat your own dog food, right? So of course, I use Will on the daily. It's like I'm actually addicted to Will. That's like a new addiction in my life. I should be very careful, but at least I'm no longer in the LinkedIn rabbit hole.
Yeah,
for that matter. But aside from Will, I play around a lot with, of course, ChatGPT. That's a thing I kind of use very frequently, but more as like a sort of a second brain.
I haven't seen a Ludwig action figure yet. You're probably the only one together with me who hasn't posted an action figure.
Yeah, I'm too stupid to do that. I actually don't know where I should actually get it, so I'm sorry for that.
I can teach you.
And then I play around on and off with Replits.
Yeah.
Like when I have a new idea, instead of kind of writing it down, I throw it into Replit and I see how good it goes. And then pretty recently, like I start playing around with Midjourney. I think Midjourney is also like pretty rad. I think it's purely but I have a specific use case for Midjourney. So I have this like it's like a side story. I have this mental coach. Her name is Eva Verkouteren. She's awesome.
I know her. She
You
used to be
know
a
her?
and we worked together at Board of Innovation.
Yeah. Like she's great,
Yeah,
right?
she's amazing.
She's
Shout out to
amazing. Shout out to Eva. She's gonna like this. So when I have my session with her, like at the end of the session, like I always come to some sort of a visualization. That kind of works really well for me when I am at the end of a coaching session. When I have a visualization, I can kind of wrap my head around that. And then what I do, I then, or the same day or the day after, I go into Midjourney and I use Midjourney to create an image or to create like a visual out of like that realization I had out of a coaching with Eva. And
cool.
that really helps me to then kind of make like, I'm now kind of making like a little book of all these visualizations with Midjourney. That's kind of my use case. So
With like a sort of a vision board or something, or
yeah, some sort of a vision board. Yeah, you could call it that way. And I think that works really well for me.
you should productize that. Build like a Replit MVP. I think a lot of people.
Like, or maybe you should, I already kind of have my hands full with this whole
Yeah,
Willow
yeah,
and Will thing.
I know that. I know that. That's the thing. Like it became so easy to build like MVPs, etc., and to productize things that where do you start? Like every day, 5 ideas pop up, and yeah, prioritizing those. But like, let's say it's a free idea for someone listening to this show. Like you can build it. Like
Yeah,
the
and please give us like build some sort of an affiliate link, right? So
yeah,
we can
some
like but it's very funny. I think what you're mentioning there, it's good, but it's also bad because I think it leads to a lot of like unfinished products. Like I think like I had a podcast with this with Garrett. He has this if I can do a plug to another pod called AI and
yes.
Chill. It's like US based. And we were talking about like vibe coding and vibe marketing, and the whole idea of vibe coding is great, but it's also going to lead to a lot of like technological waste. A bit like you have technical waste or technical debt when you build software. You're gonna have like a huge heap of all unfinished products that were started through Leopard or started through Lovable, and it's also going to only increase the amount of digital waste that we have. So I think that's like the flip side of the same coin, right? You're gonna have like so many unfinished products, like it's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, there's probably a name for that or something, but I recognize it. It's crazy. You start so many things now, and every idea you have, you prompt it, and yeah, something rolls out of it, and then it just stays there and nothing happens with it. So there should be like a marketplace or something for that, for like
Yeah,
unfinished.
it's like I was thinking actually about that, like a graveyard. Like you have
Yeah.
a graveyard for cards, you should like have some sort of a graveyard for unfinished software or something.
Google has it, eh? You have Google Graveyard. That's like all the projects they killed, but like you should have one where, like for example, indeed the vision board generator, for example, you bring it to 70, 80%, and yeah, you stop doing it. And indeed, in exchange for an affiliate or something, someone can can pursue the idea. Think that might resonate. Another idea for people in
Another
market. We keep on going. Let's jam. I have a couple of questions left, Ludwig, so let's get to it. Maybe we touched it briefly, but like, how do you think AI and AI tools will change the way marketing teams operate and marketing teams are structured in, let's say, 3 to 5 years? And I know, yeah, you don't have a glass sphere or something, but I'm super curious to hear your takes on that.
Yeah, of course, this has been something I have been thinking about quite extensively already for quite a while. So I believe that related to how marketing teams are going to be organized, right? I think they're going to be significantly smaller, okay? And you'll have like one more of a generic marketing profile that basically knows a bit about social, knows a bit about like organic social, knows a bit about paid, knows a bit about SEO or geo or whatever the new thing is going to be, who has like a pretty like broad idea and is very capable of understanding what the objective of the business is. So like it's more of a strategic slash tactical profile. And then that marketeer is going to have like an army of agents that are all like doing something very specific. So there's going to be an SEO agent, there's going to be a social media agent, there's going to be like
Paid.
paid ads agent, there's going to be a content marketing agent. There are going to be like an army of agents that are all going to be instructed by this like marketeer in a company, and those agents will basically like serve as digital workers, and together with that human, basically they're gonna be the marketing team.
I think we're getting really close to that. I think it's not that far away. To be honest, I already see some people doing that.
Yeah, like you already have like an example in your head of like a company or someone you know who's doing that. I'm like actually interested.
Yeah, like not a clear example, I think. Yeah, I see people like, for example, my former company, Board of Innovation, they do it for a lot of their customers. They're doing like, I don't know if I'm actually allowed to call the company, but like for a really big soda brand, yeah, they do AI stuff and they really build autonomous engines where, yeah, the input comes from humans, but yeah, they work 24 and a lot of let's say creative roles out of it. A lot of like, for example, one example was Pedigree from PepsiCo,
Yeah.
where they had like a billboard where there was dogs from the dog shelter, and whenever a dog got taken, yeah, they automatically showed like a new dog on the billboard, which is
Wow.
yeah like a super nice use case, but that on steroids 24/7 with like all the subdomains of yeah modern marketing you just mentioned. Yeah, I think we're really getting there. I'm exploring a lot with NA10 now, like building mostly yeah content topic generating things or content repurposing workflows. But you see that yeah that we are getting there, and I think like having an agent run yeah the performance marketing and yeah like moving the needle wherever it's necessary or tweaking campaigns and stuff. I think the agents are already getting better than a lot of human performance marketers.
Yeah.
It's getting
What
tricky on the other side because like a lot of people yeah they need to stay relevant, and yeah you need to learn and adopt these AI tools. You need to embrace them, you need to start working with them, but I see that still for a lot of people yeah it's still a big step in my opinion, because not everyone is so tech savvy even in marketing.
And I think there the biggest challenge lays, right? It's a bit like with back in the days when APIs were just becoming a thing and integrations. Like in the beginning, you needed to be like very well versed in like coding to be capable of working with APIs. And now basically APIs have become super accessible, and like you and me or people that have zero experience technically can just start doing integrations through APIs. I think you're going to start seeing the same with agents. And for example, you see it there, like all these like big tech giants, Google, Meta, they are all basically creating this orchestration models where basically they have like the stack stitched together, where you as a user you can basically start deploying your different agents, right? So that's a big fight that is going on right now in the tech scene.
Yeah, because also I see like many use cases. For example, building like lead magnets, like white papers, etc. Like there was a guy, I think it's called productrisks.ai, and he built like an entire workflow. He used Gumloop as a software, and
Okay.
it basically does you answer a couple of questions about your product, and he gives you a fully designed report on all the risks that comes with launching your product ID, which is crazy that that's possible. And yeah, then they use prompts of like 20 pages probably. So the prompt engineering, yeah, that's also getting more and more important, I think. And that's also where a lot of people still struggle. And that's basically the first base. Yeah, a lot of people they just do like very basic prompts. Yeah, that can already make like a huge difference in the output. And that's also like one of the things that really caught my attention in my survey I'm doing. A lot of people they say what is your biggest challenge when it comes to AI tools? Yeah, the poor output, the quality of the outputs.
Yeah.
But often that has to do with like the prompting, because yeah, if you look at a lot of the things you see on LinkedIn, etc., yeah, people share crazy stuff like carousels fully designed by AI. Yeah, these action figures, etc. Those are small things, but yeah, if you put like a great prompt, yeah, the output is gonna be great as well.
Yeah. And I think, for example, with Will, that's one of the main challenges that we are focusing on, is that like, how can you create great outputs without people needing to know how to be great at prompting? And I think that's a challenge that we really need to be capable of solving, like really understanding what people are trying to achieve through like bad prompts. Because like prompt engineering, it's like they call it prompt engineering for a reason, right? It's not
Yeah.
necessarily super easy.
No, it's not necessarily easy. Google released like I think a 65-page document on prompting last week. It's crazy the stuff that's in there. It's things that people never thought about when it comes to prompting.
Yeah, but I think when we will need to start writing manuals that teach people how to prompt, then we should basically not talk about like those manuals, but we should talk about like making prompting easier. I think that's kind of the thing.
Probably, but there needs to be like I'm a big fan of leaving like a bit of skill in the game, because if it's all super easy, what is gonna differentiate people? How are we gonna make money, right? That's also something important to think of, in my opinion. But we need to teach people, we need to do it for them, all these things. I'm not saying we, but people in general. There's an entire part of the economy linked to that, right? So if it's come too easy and it's all autonomous, the entire consulting industry and the entire marketing services industry, it's done. And I think we're not there yet. I think we'll never get there, to be honest, in my opinion, but it's just super fascinating to think about that.
Yeah, like my take here is like a bit different. I think if we can democratize for John and Jane Doe whatever the solution is, I'm 100% down. But I think the company that provides those solutions needs to be a company that has the domain expertise. And I think then it's not necessarily like putting skill in the prompting, but it's more putting skill into the outputs of the prompts.
Yeah, but I think those two go quite hand in
Hand in
hand.
hand.
Yeah, if you have like a really advanced prompt, there's probably domain expertise in the prompt. Now we're getting technical, right?
No, but I see what I think Midjourney is a good example of that, by the way.
Okay, I have a couple of questions left. I'll quickly go through them. Maybe the last question of the general episode, like what advice would you give like marketers and entrepreneurs in general that are looking to leverage AI-driven tools like Will to scale their own business? Well, what advice would you give when it comes to consistency, etc.? Do you have any hot takes for them?
I think here I would again say like experimentation is key. Keep trying stuff. If you're not trying all these things right now, you're gonna be like redundant, like maybe like 6 months from now. So things are going super fast. And I think a very important realization for marketeers from where I'm looking at it is that the way technology, or no, the velocity with which new technologies are being adapted nowadays is significantly higher than only 6 months ago. So like that whole notion of like, oh, we have time because it's going to take at least 2-3 years before like the majority starts adopting, no, like forget it. Like technological adoption, from we all know like the curve of technological adoption, right? The speed with which like new technologies are now moving from like early adopters to majority to laggards, it's faster than before.
Yeah, crazy.
You're like the days when you're ahead as a marketeer, if you have a bit of technical capacity and you're ahead like 2-3 years, it's over. Like there's no more staying ahead.
But it's exactly what I said, what I told you before we started recording. I'm doing like AI trainings now for marketing teams, and what you see there is like every couple of weeks, I need to change the deck and I need to change the program, because like for example, I have like an image generation tool. It became irrelevant through the new ChatGPT model release. And that happens continuously. Every couple of weeks, you have like a groundbreaking new release that makes some of the other ones irrelevant or outdated. And the pace is so crazy. I've never seen anything like that, because some people compare it with the entrance of social media, etc., in the early 2000s. But this is so much faster. You can't compare it with anything.
Yeah, and there for me, like the whole, maybe what you're referring to too is like the I see like the whole agentic web. That's that's the new technological shift, eh? Like it's the new software as a service. It's the CD-ROM moment. It's the SaaS moment. It's the social media moment. It's a crazy fundamental shift, eh?
Yeah,
And
it's the
that's
new
where people, yeah,
big computing platform, I guess, huh? So that
yeah. And the skills of the future for me, definitely also for marketeers, are going to be related to being capable of like building your team of digital workers and being capable of like instrumenting those digital workers. I think those are really the skills of the future if I would be a marketeer.
exactly. Okay, Ludwig, I think I reached the end of my regular question list. So if it's okay for you, I have like a couple of small questions, just like the quick fire, I call it.
I had the quick fire. Okay,
Quick
let's
fire,
go.
like a couple of small ones, short question answer. So what's your biggest marketing bet for 2025?
Agents, 100%.
Okay, cool. Then what's your favorite marketing book? Do you read books?
It's super old, but still super relevant. And for me, that's the four P's of marketing.
Okay, yeah, we're getting back there. Like product, place, price. What's the fourth one? Product, place,
Promotion.
promotion. Yeah, right.
There's actually a fifth that's people, but you know.
Yeah, that's Cutler, right? Philip
Yeah,
Cutler.
yeah, 100%. And that's what I mean with domain expertise, Yannick.
Yeah,
People
exactly.
that know Cutler and don't know that book, those are people like that's more of a psychological thing than purely marketing. But I think it's
It
gonna
was like when
again,
social media came, it became like super irrelevant, and we had like all kinds of different frameworks. But now, if I think of it, Cutler is becoming super relevant again.
yeah. That's another like a custom GPT based on Cutler. There's another idea right there.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do it. The best marketing tool, and you can't say Willow, unfortunately. So
Yeah, then I say will, right?
yeah,
No, okay. Yeah.
that one goes pretty far.
Yeah, because I'm also now thinking about Cutler. I'm gonna say I'm like I have a doubt between WhatsApp and LinkedIn, but like for the sake of the future, I'm gonna say WhatsApp.
Okay, nice. You keep your eggs in the WhatsApp basket. Someone in a previous episode said the written word, by the way. That was also super powerful, and I think it also resonates with Will. The written word. Cool.
Beautiful.
And then I have two more to go. If you could give one piece of advice to growth and marketing teams about AI and social media, what would it be?
When you build something that uses AI for marketing purposes, make sure that you're the right person to build it.
It's a nice one. Pretty deep. Cool. But I
Yeah.
get what you're saying, the domain expertise. Yeah, that's
Stay away from vibe marketing.
well, that's a hot take, like a really hot take.
Yeah, that's you say that yeah, you should always be a bit provocative, right?
Yeah, exactly. Stay away from vibe marketing. Okay, let's print it on a t-shirt. And then, what's your best kept marketing secret?
My best kept marketing, yeah, of course, if I'm gonna share it here, it's no longer going to be a secret. It's also going to be a pretty deep one, but I think it really resonates with how I think about marketing. And it's also something I learned in the United States, by the way, full circle. It's not about the know-how, it's not about the know-who, it's about the who knows you.
Nice. That goes really deep. That's the philosopher in you. I think that's it's not about the know-how, it's not about the know-who, it's about the who knows you.
Yeah, but of course it's about the know-how, eh? And of course it's about the know-who, and of course it's about the who knows you. But it's more like the sequence of things. Those two things are super important, but there's a degree of importance. But
Yeah,
those three things are for me the most important things.
cool. Okay, super nice. Ludwig, thanks so much for joining me on Growth Secrets
Yeah,
episode.
thank you so much for doing this. Like you have a great format.
Okay, love it. Thanks for the compliment. I'm taking it. Yeah, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for the openness and the transparency. And yeah,
My pleasure.
I'll put the links to Will and your LinkedIn, etc., in the show notes so people can find you and they can probably give Will a try. Yeah, thanks so much. And thanks everyone for watching or listening. And see you in another episode. Bye bye.
Bye guys. Bye.